mean, like, this is the green Immodanes for a ramp deck, potentially, and I think that's spicy. Other things that we might want to consider, Bloomvine Regent. It's a dragon that ramps and you get to gain life. It presents a large flying body as well that blocks well against Pixie, so that one intrigues. And there's a couple other options here between like Kintree Severance or Rakshas's Bargain. I mentioned both of those because they're triggering beans, so they're undercosted triggering beans and either developing the board state or drawing cards. Both of them are considerations. I don't know that either is going to fit ultimately, but you know, that's what we're here to talk about, right?
Absolutely, and those cards are popping up on the screen now for you. So similar question to before, especially considering that it kind of gains the same number of tools that Pixie does. Where do you predict this archetype to land next season?
It's really difficult when it comes to something like this because Domain is hedging really hard. The build that you just saw, that is so hedged for Pixie and aggro, but Domain is going to suffer some of the same issues, I think, that Golgari mid-range and many of these archetypes face at this point, which is that the meta is diverse. As much as everybody wants to scream for bans, we have up to 10 viable decks in this metagame right now. And how do you possibly position your deck to deal with all of them? I don't know that anybody's doing that effectively, and Domain in particular is a slower deck, meaning there are more ways to attack it. There are more turns to attack it, and there are more strategies that can be used to attack it. So will this be in tier 1 by the end of the next season? Personally, I don't think so. But I'm curious to see if the new tools it gets allowed to keep up.
I suspect Wizards took a look at all the standard decks and said, let the top ones cook, because quite genuinely, I think they're placing their bets on this sort of introducing enough tools to change things up. If it doesn't, maybe we will see a round of fans. I don't know, but yeah, Source Domain, much like us for Pixie, is going to remain in the grind fest, and it's going to be a deck that needs to hedge for whatever stays on top, which things might look the same week 1. We'll see though. But nonetheless, let's talk about sort of the next big deck and where it's going. Mono Red Aggro.
While Domain may remain, Mono Red pulled off the upset of the season, replacing Rule Mice as the lead red aggro variant by the end of the season and causing a public outcry to ban Monstrous Rage while en route to 69 top 8s and 9 trophies across 7 weeks. So shown here is Sarlanga's build, which made it to the finals of Saturday's 48-player MTGO Challenge before falling to Esper Pixies in the finals. Let's look at some of the new toys we have to play with for this, though. First and foremost, Sun Strike Master. I'm not saying it's viable, gang. I'm just saying it's fascinating that we have a red mana dork that can one-shot dragons and demons, and it merits consideration for that alone. Secondly, Fleeting Effigy. This is a 2/2 with haste, and it can scale for the single turn that you play it. So you've got a mana sink, you've got something that's very difficult to remove. Any sorcery speed removal will never touch this. And I don't know that you're running more than one copy, but I think it's intriguing to look at it and say, do we just want one copy of this card that we're just going to quick click out on the battlefield, deal 2 points, deal 4 points, whatever. We're doing it that way. Finally, Quarry Steelcutter. Trample, haste, stream of creatures that have
3, 4,
prowess.
5, 6, 7.
I can see a copy making its way into one of the red builds with that barbed batter fist, which was just in the build you saw. I mean, it's a clear upgrade, right? Why play the batter fist when you got Quarry Steelcutter just giving you everything you want? So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, Quarry Steelcutter is especially intriguing. But there's a whole lot of new red cards, especially considering dragons are here. They tend to be more mid-range friendly, right? So what cards were looked at either by the team or others, but just didn't make the cut?
Sure. So Magnetic Hellkite was one of the bigger ones. I think this is a great card, but I think it belongs in a mid-range deck or in a deck that's hedged to punish a very specific mana base. And it's not really stronger for what we're trying to do than Sunspine Lynx is, right? Like Sunspine Lynx's ETB and its games, Magnetics gets you ahead. And we're not trying to grind, we're trying to win when we're talking about mono red right now. So I don't think Hellkite's great there at the moment, but I do think that card will find a home. Another quick card to talk about is Star of the Arena. This feels over. To me, it's low and it's overpriced compared to Swift Spear, and that's the litmus test for red right now.
Go ahead.
Spot in mono red that everybody's trying to figure out how many they want copies of. So it would be the first creature to get replaced by another 1-drop, and I'm just saying straight up, I don't think Star of the Arena is the one to do it. Last but not least, Overwhelming Surge. No less mana, you get a Braid. Just play Braid. Trying to combine these 2 modes together to get value is an unlikely venture. You're probably just getting 1 mode, which just play Braid at that point.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Let's talk talk about the final deck in our Tier 1 archetypes. One that, again, searched recently, split some differences with Demir Bounce over the course of the whole season. Let's talk about Demir Tempo.
So Max, Demir Temple resurfaced this season, snatching up 46 top 8s and 8 trophies across 7 weeks, serving as a counterpunch to Domain's dominance early on and resulting control archetypes that arose like Azorius. Now, shown here is O'Danielakos' build, having taken down an 82-player MTGO challenge this past Friday, taking down Golgari midrange in the finals, in fact. So let's look at where we can get some extra points here. Now, Rock Curse Rakshasa, again, Kaido, Tidebinder, Curiosity, you got a lot of reasons to be curious about whether or not this card is good. Scavenger Regions, Mini Neat Hook with a 4/4 warded body. I don't know if this finds a home because it's battling with Enduring Curiosity and Shieldred for slots, but if a split happens, I can see it over the course of, we just need more, like another sweeper because Convoke grows, right? At which point that region starts to get slots. Strategic Betrayal, Exile Edict plus Graveyard Interaction that is one-sided. I think that also is going to merit some consideration, but it's very much a meta call. You know, if you're going up against Convoke, that card's trash. But if you're going up against something like, you know, Domain, where they're landing one Overlord potentially, yeah, I could see it go through. So it just kind of depends.
Okay. Yeah, big consideration there. Swarm hasn't been in the meta for a second, so you know maybe that does go in. Any event, what cards did we look at that didn't make the cut that you know other people might consider? We need to kind of warn them that they are trap cards.
So I think there's two that people are looking at and they're like, ooh, I love these, which is Sinkhole Surveyor and there's Quarcy Revenant. And both of these don't have haste and die nowhere to run, case closed, end of story. Until nowhere to run isn't the defining removal spell in this format, and right now it is, you just can't play X3s that don't have haste because they're not going to connect reliably. And that's just the unfortunate truth of the matter.
Yeah, there are a few new cards that are X3s, and it made me wonder, like, because of nowhere to run, it got me hyper-focused on looking at X3s, and it's like, why do you keep developing X3s for these new sets? You know this card's you're not going to ban it. Like, you know it's in existence. These are all traps. There were some dragons that fell into that slot as well. So, yeah, a little disappointed to see so many X3s in the new set. Nonetheless, that does it for all of our Tier 1 archetypes. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off and go down into Tier 2 and talk about Gruul Mice. Gruul Mice began strong, right? 40 top 8s. Alone just in the first 2 weeks, but then it limped along to the finish line in the end, racking up 72 top 8s and 6 trophies overall. Shown here is Garifasur and Shields build at the top 8ed last Thursday 65-player MTGO challenge before getting bounced out. But let's see what we get that might help. The first card I want to talk about is Wild Bride. This is a hasty 1-drop. It is sorcery speed, but you get to +3/+0, gain haste, harmonize later, so you get to play it again. That sort of ability to access more cards, more spells, especially in the mid to late game, has been kind of this deck's weakness, being able to grind out. Wild Bride introduces an intriguing possibility. We've also got Corey Steel Cutter. I like where this card is. I won't talk too much about it. We already mentioned it, but I think it slots in here to Gruul Mice as well. And then Seize Opportunity. This is a way for the deck to grind, to access more cards. You either get to choose one of the modes where you exile the top 2, you know, until an next turn play, or 2 target creatures get +2/+1. So both of those modes seem rather helpful in a deck that wants to grind it out.
So Max, this is going to be a refrain for all these Tier 2 decks, but what needs to change for this archetype to make the leap back to Tier 1?
It just needs more tools to grind against, you know, Pixie, against mid-range with. It generally has trouble finishing games quickly enough against the field, especially when they pose problems in the resource war department. Longevity has kind of been the issue for the archetype, especially as of late. You know, in the face of Pixie and Domain, it's going to have to compete into the mid-game phase. So Harmonize possibly helps with that, being able to replay cards, having cards that help you grind, have access to more cards off the top of the library. Those are going to be the keys for this deck, I believe.
Yeah, Harmonize is really an intriguing option with that Channel Dragons or whatever? The Dragonfire? Yeah. That card is really intriguing given that the Harmonize side of it pairs well with Sunspine Links. So if you need to just put that last few points in, I like where we're looking there. I agree with you. It needs the ability to deal with a little burst damage there at the end. That can be it. But we're going to move things along to the next one. Coming in this season for Aether Drift Standard, Golgari Midrange. Let's talk about it.
I got everything. I don't know what the fuck I keep.
This deck was an unanswered question mark from the Aether Drift Standard, right? 34 top 8s, 5 trophies by the end, always seemingly on the edge of breaking through, but never being able to do just enough to get there. Shown here, the guard specialist, Vitor Carvajo's build, having made it to the finals of Friday's A2 Player MTGO Challenge, before falling to Demir Tempo inexplicably. But let's dive into the new tools that we have to work with here. So, one card I want to point out first, Hollowmerk Siege. This is a 2 mana value enchantment. Not bad. The old sieges used to be much more expensive. I think the cycle of sieges are a lot more useful. Block once you have your engines in place. Once you're on the attack, if you want to.
I don't know
game.
what type of
The
deck this
absent
is.
side
Maybe
really
it's fucking
appeals to
sick
the
though.
initiative, the Sentinel, map tokens. You could also argue for the Sultai side. If you're using 2 copies, picking one for each really makes this deck even tougher. Although I think at first we're going to start with a spicy 1-up. But maybe you want more copies of this, maybe you build into this card. So that's a possibility. Seraph Elusive Hunter, which I've talked about in the context of mono green, also helps you gain card advantage with all the interaction that's going on in the meta right now. And I can't not mention Rock Curse Rakshasa, right? 2 mana value demon, huge for this deck, even if it just sticks on board to help you with the annex. But it's also a great way to come back from the graveyard and just stop your opponent from being able to block you. And I think that's kind of what happens with Golgari matches, is sometimes they clog up the board, you don't get to get through, you're worried about your clock with Archie into the draws. This can kind of help you with that situation.
Fair. Now, Max, again, looking at Golgari, what is holding this archetype back from success, and do you think that changes with Dragonstorm joining the card pool?
Golgari midrange has classically suffered from an inability to grind with deck. You would think traditionally you'd be able to grind with the low curve decks like Pixie, but it's having trouble there, and it's having trouble going big against Domain. That's really the main problem, is going big against Domain. It tends to do really well against the red-based aggro, and I suspect that's why it's re-entered the meta. Maybe with these cards in addition, maybe making it more of a powerhouse. Annex becoming less of a liability since you've got that 2 mana value demon. Maybe that helps. But making the deck more powerful, I think, is the answer. Making it something of an impact in the mid game. Slight pivots, more powerful features. Really going to help navigate the advantage.
Crazy.
Like
I've never seen
they try to
that.
get Kaido
What
in
the
there.
hell you
Maybe
got?
a couple back fixes from the resource board so quickly. But whether it can complement the classic rival
What
game,
the
that's the real
fuck was
question.
that?
of this
That
deck.
was crazy.
And it's going to be remain to be seen even with these tools. So I'll be interested to see week 1. I want to pilot Golgari myself and see where it goes week 1, especially versus Domain.
Yeah, I'm with you. If it can find a way through Domain, I feel like we've got some serious viability for that deck as a tier 1 option, but man, that is not an easy matchup, and no one has managed to solve it yet. However, speaking of decks that are trying to solve matchups, let's talk about 7th place here with Jeskai Oculus.
The Eye in the Sky, Cantor Faunus, the advent of Pro Tour Aether Drift is the remix on Azorius had a far stronger plan B than its predecessor. 38 top 8s, 4 trophies later. Has the experiment died down? We'll see. Shown here is Jesse Lou's SCA qualifier winning list from a few weeks back. Let's see if we have anything new to add. And there are quite a few options here. Quarry Mountain Monastery in the land department. This presents an interesting option, being able to exile a top card of your library in the mid game, do something when things have stalled. Stalled board states are not something that are great for this deck. Glacial Dragon Hunt, an is a card, 2-drop sorcery. Draw, discard, do 3 damage to a creature, and then it's got Harmonize on top of that. What's not to love about all those modes in this deck? One card that I thought about also was Runescale Stormbrew. Now, the downside is you are going up the curve a little bit here in a deck that traditionally wants to stay low curve, but being able to counter a spell, especially low curve spells, we've got a lot of low curve decks, doing some disruption, and then having a dragon that whenever you play a non-creature spell gets a boost might be a good option. And then I just want to mention briefly a couple of Jeskai colored cards. Rediscover the Way, as the saga that has the first couple modes. You can look at the top 3, put one in your hand, put the rest in your library. I wish they could put them in the graveyard. That would be much better. I said the same thing with Stock Up. But the third phase, where you get to add Double Strike to an Oculus possibly, is nothing to yawn at, really. And Narset Jeskai Waymaster, the legendary monk, that's the one that you get to discard your hand, draw cards equal to the number of spells. I think with the number of low curve spells this deck has, it might be able to take advantage of something like Narset, and that's a 3/4 body, which is great stat.
And Oculus is one of those decks that always tempts me, Max. All you need is one scenario where you get to, surveil an Oculus and then play it on turn 2 with a helping hand to go, I
I'm
mean,
gonna keep
this
it
feels
4x6.
gross. Like, why is this not tier 1? So I'm with you on that front, but I look at this and I think, how do we get it back to tier 1? Because it was almost there, Max, and we saw it, bounce in and out. It just couldn't stick the landing. So what do we do here?
It's just the deck needs more consistency, right? The reason we even talk about a plan B is because plan A can be kind of sticky sometimes, kind of hairy to get through. It needs to be able to pivot once the graveyard hate hits. That's always been the issue for the deck. We've seen builds attempt to get around this with, like introducing Monument to Endurance to it. But the good news is we're also seeing low curve creatures in the 2-mana value slot added to this deck recently to help kind of mitigate against this. A feature on the deck could rely on, the flurry, the new flurry mechanic, or just frequent spell casting. So I don't know. There's a few small pivots the deck can make. We'll see if it survives through the new meta. I suspect it will stick around for a while and kind of hover at the edges of the meta. Occasionally going in and grabbing a trophy and surprising everybody. It's going to depend on how much graveyard hate is popular. If people are brewing, if people are adding slots, they might be cutting their graveyard hate. So that's definitely something to consider.
That's fair. That's fair. And it really comes down to graveyard hate for that deck in particular. But speaking of a deck that is affected by graveyard hate, but not damned by it, let's talk about Dimir Bounce.
Dimir Bounce emerged onto the scene before Aether Drift, but it quietly snagged 16 top 8s and established itself over the past few weeks with 4 trophies. 2 coming in the final week, by the way. Shown here is Rostov's build, a Smash for 77-player MTGO challenge on Sunday, beating Dimir Temple in the finals. But what do we get from Dragonstorm? Well, let's talk about a few cards. The first one I want to point out is Whale of War. This is a great response to Swarm aggro if it ever returns, if we ever have to worry about Convocation or if Goblins become a thing. You get 2 modes on this. The other mode, you can return some of your low-curve creatures to hand. Here in this deck, you're going to want that. You got your Thundertrap trainers, you got your Fear of Isolation. So an intriguing sideboard option at the very least if you're facing off against something like Golgari Midrange, which loves to do a lot of single target removal. We've got Ringing Strike Mastery. We've seen versions of this card before, but at 1 mana value, this isn't that bad at all. Turn 1, hitting something like a red-based aggro creature, hitting a Heartfire hero, bouncing it later, and then putting it on something more important, like an Nemesis, might be an interesting option. We've also got Tygam Master Opportunist, allowing you to, recur your spells much later, and this deck goes into the mid-game often.
4, 5, 6,
So
7,
you're
8,
going to be able to
9,
take
10,
advantage of
11,
that confidence
12.
spell. And then finally, Wingblade Disciple, which has Flurry on it. It's an intriguing option. At 3 mana value, it might be 1 mana too expensive for this deck. Nonetheless, I could see somebody running this as a 1-of and getting in those flyers to help with Ringing Kaido.
That's fair. Now, I look at this, Max, and I think this deck, this archetype, it surged in the final weeks, and I mean like hard. Most of the season, nowhere to be found. Didn't matter, you were playing Pixies, you weren't playing Dimir. But in the last few weeks, it was all about Dimir. Why is that?
It just slots in well in the meta filled with red-based aggro, Golgari midrange, its rival Esper Pixie. It's more efficient in some ways than Pixie, especially because the mana base, the easier mana base, that matters a lot. The issue has come classically, again, with the Domain matchup. Domain seems to be the gatekeeper in a lot of ways here. But if you're seeing less Domain in your local meta, this is a deck that could honestly win the whole event, and it has. It's snuck in there when Domain has decided to go outside for a smoke break. So, Dimir is still a very healthy option if you're not seeing as much Domain.
Yeah, if Domain's going to go out for a pack of smokes, this is the deck right here. But with that, let's go to Brewer's Corner, Max, and let's talk about some decks that have Dragonstorm cards already in them. Let's kick things off. I love what you did here. Jeskai Dragons.
All right, so taking a look here at Jeskai Dragons. Apologies for having to use Mox Steel for the new cards, but I started with a strong foundation, right? In the past, I would build these mid-range decks, and they would be way too top-heavy. We decided to slim down just a few dragons. I like where Torch the Tower is. I like Dispelling Exhale, especially as an option. It's a much better make disappear, and in a Dragons deck, it's even more efficient. 4 full copies of the Tarkir Invasion. I think that's very appropriate here. It's good removal, and it also gives you a target, for your dragons to hit and create more dragons. and Sarkin slots in really well into that. Getting a 1/1 counter, adding a treasure token to be able to get closer to your 5 mana value drop seems very, very awesome. Osseous Exhale seems like a decent piece of removal, and you get the 2 life off of it if you behold a dragon, so that can help in the mono red matchup. I got 2 copies of the Orb in here. Don't forget that the Orb exists, giving your dragons haste and ramping you into them. I really like the 4 copies of Dragonologist. This presents the opportunity for something like Hornhorde Dracosaur to remain on the field for an extra turn, allowing us to actually benefit off that. A lot of times you play Bonehorde Dracosaur and it just gets removed. And then lastly, I want to mention Magmatic Hellkite as a 4 of punishing Esper Pixie and Domain right away. I think is what's really going to present this deck as a possible meta option. I just love where that card is right now. And even if you're not hitting those decks, what you are hitting, you're slowing them down. Even the low curve decks, you're slowing them down for a turn, and that could be quite significant.
Yeah, Jeskai Dragons has a lot of interesting pieces that came in. And the last time we had Tarkir, if I remember correctly, that was when we had the original like Dragon Lord Slumgar, Dragon Lord Ojutai, Baltung Invocation, Slumgar Scorn. And I can tell you, I played that all the way to the top of, back then it was RPTQ. Yeah, we've shifted systems like 3 times now, Wizards. This is on you. But yeah, that deck was real once upon a time. So I'm curious if we see a comeback. I don't know what wedge it's going to be, but Jeskai feels like a great place to start right now. So I'm here for that one. That said, let's kind of mess with this and push on over to Azorius Bane. Alrighty, folks. So I've been trying to make Simulacrum Synthesizer and Repurposing Bay work for a very long time. I've been trying to figure out the best way to make it all happen, and they gave us Coco. Like, finally, they gave me Coco for Synthesizer. So yeah, this is where I'm starting when the season kicks off. Because if you haven't been able to do this before with Collection Company, believe me, it's going to feel great when you put 2 synthesizers in play off the United Battlefront and laugh as they both trigger and give you 2 giant XX creatures that just get bigger. Now, the other fun part is that this gets you removal. We have hover ships, snares, saw blades, caskets. We have so many pieces of removal. This is super pre-hedged for red-based aggro. That is the way I wanted it. I hate losing to red-based aggro on game 1. And I feel like the rest of it, we have one hell of a plan here too. Like, we get to cast United Battlefront to find River Turn Monument in conjunction with Stonebrain. Both of those come off of United Battlefront, by the way, as does Ghost Vacuum. So you have a ton of ways to interact with the combo decks and with the grindier decks and just replace all that dead removal post-board. And that's, I don't know, this is spicy. I don't know if it's going to be tier 1, but damn, it's going to be fun.
Let's talk about Boros Monument, where I will also talk about that card. Introduced our big to this list. Basically, this is Artist Talent plus Monument in a spellcasting shell. Lots of directed face damage is included here, so that's part of the win con. But Monument is a strong card, as we've seen. There have been lots of build-arounds for that deck. Coco for Monuments. So I'm going to claim that here as well. United Battlefront helping us to dig for those. Among some other really good pieces here that have been forgotten about, Wrath's Tunnel Grinder, Bitter Reunion, and Case of the Crimson Pulse all allows us to discard line card advantage. All of those are here, and they do put in work with the Monuments. Also, just want to note, Urbrass Forge coming back from Sideboard. Nobody's playing Authority to Consoles. I think this card's going to come back in many ways and punish people who aren't doing that, which is understandable. Authority of the Consoles is kind of a weak card if you're just facing off against like red-based aggro. So I can understand that. Let's not forget the Mycosynth Gardens, able to copy your Monuments. And then an intriguing addition here is the 3-drop sort of removal enchantment Ward 2 that from Duskborn that nobody ever really plays. So digging and getting that card out to be able to remove just about any permanent might be a healthy option. So Boros Monument, just the latest iteration of the Monument builds, and we're looking to see which of these decks, Monument, Synthesizer, introduce themselves to the meta. I've been waiting for both of these archetypes to come into the meta for quite some time, so maybe we start to see these week 1.
Honestly, I'd forgotten that United Battlefront can get Forge. That's kind of wild. Okay, fair enough. But with that, let's get to our very last brew here, Mono Black Ceremony. From that Mono Black guy, aka Vixen Zavir, sent this one on over. I'm so happy that they did. This is so cool. So, Sip 6 Ceremony, obviously in older formats, people are going to try and break this with an infinite combo immediately. But it's worth noting that in this particular list, we have other ways to abuse it. We're not going infinite, we don't have that ability. But with this little Clay Revenant here, it's just 3 mana for every 2/2 you want, over and over again. Every 3 mana you spend, you get another 2/2 as long as Civ 6 in play. You also get to play this fun game with Market Backwalker called I'll spend 6 mana and draw 3 cards and get a 2/2. So, like, there's a lot of little pieces here that work out nicely. You know, you get a little Unscrupulous Agent, make him exile a card, then you get a 2/2. And last but not least, this is why I think this deck has potential, because we finally have a home for Season Flex. All those cards, all those creatures that are dying on impact, well, you look at that final mode here, and you can see where that's going to do some serious damage as the game goes on, and we've got cards like Overlord of the Baelmerk just sitting there.
Spicy inclusion from our mono black specialist. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and with that, this week for our final segment, Ahead of the Curve, we're going to go ahead and look at the top cards each of us picked out of Dragonstorm for competitive play, and our hope is that this helps you snag the cards you need before they skyrocket in price as competitive players. So, Max, what are your top 5 cards coming out of the new set?
Alright, so I had in mind to pick 5 cards that slot into some archetypes that I personally want to pilot as well, in addition to just being good competitive cards. My first one I'm going to talk about here is Elspeth Stormslayer. It's a 5 mana value planeswalker, one of 2 that we get in the set in addition to Ugin. Look, all these modes here just scream token decks, mono white token decks. We saw mono white tokens, Boros tokens sort of at the beginning of the season, a leftover from past sets. And that deck kind of got forgotten about. It kind of got overridden as we saw decks go bigger than it in a lot of cases. But, we have enough white cards, as Athena will point out, to have sort of a mono white control kind of shell that you could add in addition to the token shell. And I think this card slots in really well into that. The +1, being able to protect itself, that's huge. The 0, putting a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, giving them flying, that could be a game ender. And the -3 is just something that Elspeth has classically done, which is slay the big creature. So the -3 is going to see quite a bit of play here. The ability to protect itself, it is rather expensive at 5 mana value, but I think mono white doesn't mind that so much. It becomes more or less a mid-range deck. So we'll see if Elspeth Stormslayer makes its way into token decks, and see if token brews become a thing again. My second pick here is going to be Sirach, Elusive Hunter. I talked about this in the context of mono green in the Discord. Mono green is going to be a thing. It's going to be on the back of something like this, something on the back of this, and maybe Outcast or Trailblazer. Being able to draw cards is huge for green. If it can replace the things that get removed, the things that get disrupted, that's really huge. My third card that I want to talk about, Magmatic Hellkite. We've already talked about how this is going to punish the expensive mana bases, the 3-color mana bases. I like where this card's at 4 mana value. Typically you see this from like a 5 mana value card. A 4/5 flyer is a great stat line. And just being able to stun and delay your opponent and tempo from the red color set is intriguing to me. So that's going to be my third one. I'm also going to talk about Dispelling Exhale. We've already talked about how this is a make disappear, ramped up, basically reprinted, but in dragon decks, and there are going to be more than a few dragon decks in multiple color sets, I suspect, as people brew. Dispelling Exhale is going to have to be a must include, at least 3 of in those decks for them to be even viable. And then last but not least, because I am a Convoke pilot, I especially love the Boros Convoke deck. I think Windcrag Siege is at least a 1-of in that deck. It's got 2 modes that are helpful. So if you wanna include 2 copies, much like I have, I might go 2/2 Windcrag Siege to War Leader's Call. But being able to, the Jeskai side, being able to produce an extra body every turn, has lifelink, and attacks right away. That might be helpful, but also the Mardu side, right? Being able to double up your triggers. I'm still playing with cards like Arabella, Anin Pakal, so being able to go big in conjunction with something like War Leader's Call, the extra bodies do help whittle down their life total. So Windcrag Siege, I might go 2/2 with this, and War Leader's Call in a Boros Convoke shell. Those are my top 5 favorite cards. What are yours, Rufus?
All right.
It's pretty nasty.
first and foremost, United Battlefront. Top 7 non-land, non-creature means that this is Coco for Enchantress and Artifact decks. And whether or not this even makes a splash in Standard, I just think it's a wise investment. Like, understand that if you go back to Vintage, this can get you Time Vault and Mana for Keep. That's immediate win. There's going to be so many combo decks that utilize this over the next 10, 20 years. Just get for it. I think it's just a wise move if you play Magic. Quarry Steel Cutter is number 2 on that list. There's a lot of prowess decks that are excited about it. There's also the potential to see that single copy mono red lists. Triggers Valiant, gives trample haste, and occasionally a creature. Seems fine. Rockers Rakshasa is the 3rd one on the list. Unholy Annex just gets better. Kaido gets better. Tidebinder gets better. There's a lot of things to be done in that decay trigger. It isn't necessarily the drawback that everybody thinks it is. 4th on the list. Some Procurin. Need I say more than Pixies? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's salivating over this. It's going to be an auto include in so many lists. So just get 4. You're going to want them. It's another uncommon that's going to randomly cost $3 in like another month or something. So just get it. Strategic Betrayal is my final one. Exiles for Ketramos and its graveyard removal, all at 2 mana. We'll take an exile-based removal spell, especially an edict like this that happens to have another piece tacked on. We're here for it.
All right, all look like very good options. I feel like you went more general. I went more specific to specific archetypes. Either way, those are our top 5. And raise the checkered flag, folks. Aether Drift is done. Aether Drift Standard shifts to Tarkir Standard next week. I want to say tune in to the Rebelcast episode this weekend, Tarkir Dragonstorm Starter Kit. Me and Athena are going to go over the limited archetypes, help you with that. The signpost cards, best new cards for brewing, and we're going to provide some starting points with new creative brews and our top cards, our favorite cards for brewing, specifically in Tarkir Dragonstorm. Especially if you're a more adventurous Magic player, if you want to build something new, if you want to play with something fun, if you're a Timmy like me, then go check that out. I think you'll find something to make fun.
Absolutely. And last but not least, please like, share, and comment on this video to show some support for your community. We appreciate having all of you here. And until next time, untap, upkeep, resist.
Maria, we sound good.
It's about to get more expensive to try and get rich. The price of a Mega Millions ticket is going up. Beginning in April, the cost for a Mega Millions ticket will go up to $5. Right now it costs $2.
I've never seen it.
All right, buckle up. The cost of living continues, the gift that keeps on giving. And it's hitting in some weird places, dude. Can't even afford to gamble anymore. It's classic. Before we get this party really started, speaking of things that went up, I like old leather jackets. I recently bought this black one, but it's a little too small for me. So, dude, it's sick. It's fucking made in England. It's an old one. This thing is nice. So if you're about, I'm 5'11", $1.60. We're gonna get to the party here in a minute. 5'11", $1.60 is a little too small for me. So if you're like around 5'8", 5'9", 140 pounds, and you want that slick Ricky Aioli look, hit me up on Instagram. I'll send it to you. I can't send it back because it's vintage and I bought it on eBay for $200. Anyways, it's all yours. Hit me up on
1,
Instagram.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Someone's
7.
Anyways, back to this lady. Millennials versus the boomers. Destruction versus. That's weird.
The war that I'm seeing between the boomer generation and the millennial generation. Never before seen this. The amount of hatred between these two generations is unbelievable.
I don't know about that.
It's really bad. So all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I trust you when you misled me. And now I can never get what you got. There's no hope for the future. And now you won't step out of the position that you're in, where I'm convinced you're making decisions that aren't. There's a destruction lust.
That's a lot harder to afford what the boomers were able to afford when they were our age, right? The house.
You're using the word harder. Most people perceive it to be impossible. That they will never in their lifetime be able to achieve any of those simple things.
Not for nothing, these haircuts are what? A mandatory $40. I just paid $40 to what? Slightly bald in fashion? When I...
Speaking of the simple things, can't afford a haircut anymore. Forget about the lottery.
4, 5, 6, 7.
When I was growing up, it was $20. Like $15 haircut,
What's
$5
that?
tip, the 20 went a long way. Now,
Here we go.
Oh, this is the best, dude. The Black Friday. Black Friday is not even. Inflation's gone up so much. Black Friday, they have to pretend. This is great right here.
Oh, I hope you're hungry.
$4.29.
For nothing. For nothing. For nothing. For nothing. For nothing.
No.
For nothing. For nothing. For nothing. For nothing.
All right, but think of all the prices were just the same. It just said deal. Oh yeah, I don't know if I said this, but I'm gonna send this to you guys. Whoever wants this for free. I don't need money for it. But thank you to everybody who did buy a shirt. RLP Classic. Link in the bio. Anyways, we're gonna go through some weird stuff here, and then we're gonna dig a little bit deeper. But it's hitting everywhere, even the odd places.
About it. Right now, if you go to a concert, an NFL game, an NBA game, that shit is a luxury event nowadays. It's not what it used to be like when we were young, where you could pay $50 and enjoy a football game, a basketball game, or a concert. Now, the thing is, they've turned performances, live shows, venues, all these things into like a flex.
I may get canceled for.
He's not tripping. I recently went to a hockey game in South Florida, so you kind of do the math. Really not like the most popular thing in the world. Mighty Ducks, we're in Bombay. But me and my chick, we went. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Actually, I do. It was like, all said and done, $250. I know that's for 2 people, but I don't even drink. I had a lemonade. The best $14 lemonade I've ever had in my life. But dude, that's just a basic ass hockey game. Imagine, replace that with Miami Heat. Or football for here. Anyway, stop complaining about inflation. No, it's fun.
Saying this, and I promise I'm not trying to be mean when I say it, but the reason why you're poor is not because of inflation. Inflation has been going on since the end of time. Sometimes we have a better economy, sometimes we don't. This is nothing new. And when inflation hits, you have 2 options. You can either cut down on your expenses, or 2, you can work to improve your skill set so you can be more valuable in the marketplace to make more money so that you don't feel it.
And what does she mean, increase your skill set? All I hear is get creative. This is the best thing I've ever seen. This guy right here, he's like, I'm gonna make it no matter what. This is the best thing I've ever seen.
5, 6, 7,
I ain't never seen a nigga do it like this. This nigga drilling on top of the truck.
Dude, he's literally grilling in the back of the truck, just handing out burgers, hot dogs, I mean, whatever it is he's dealing out. But this is, you gotta give it to him, dude. Like, I knew this this dude, he did a little hot dog stand right next to this bar I used to go to like 15 years ago. That dude was still there 15 years later. And used to have just like a little stand, and all of a sudden he's got like people working for him and shit. He's got another one down the way. In Cali, this is a big thing. I'm in Florida right now, but in California, dude, these little hot dog vendor guys, basically the same thing, right? This guy's just got like a shitty truck, which is fine. He's probably doing great depending where he's at. Like, you pull up in a downtown area, fuck a permit, dude. No one can afford permits anymore. I'm not like saying go do this, but this hot dog guy out in Cali, I forget his name, I almost did it. He made like $600 to $1,000 a night, depending on how busy things were. Just flipping hot dogs, little bacon dogs, little peppers. If you ever had a Cali street dog, it's like really not good for you, but they taste awesome, and people will pay money for them, especially when they're drunk. Oh, criminal business model. Anyways, you gotta commend this guy. Okay, it's not inflation, guys. It's you. Get a pickup truck, sell hot dogs. Okay, learn your ropes. Teach yourself something right. Speaking of the haircut stuff, like last time I got a haircut, it was $45. I went to like a salon, like a year ago. I was so upset. Ruined my hair. But for the past, I don't know, almost 20 years, I've been cutting my own hair. Doesn't always look the best, but, you know, I'm glad I learned a really good skill. Anyways, just say about the haircut stuff, because I don't do any of that stuff. I feel bad for women. My chick just went and got a facial. $400. I was like, what? Face was shiny though. Anyways, speaking of like, you know, having to have a second job or sell food out of the back of a truck or, you know, do odd gigs, This dude goes, I've come to the conclusion that the sole purpose of homework is to condition children into accepting that unpaid overtime and ridiculous hours and not even being able to escape work and cleaning your own home are a normal thing to expect in the future. Yeah, it really is. Like, my whole life I've had 2 jobs, basically. Now I just have 1 job. Some people are fortunate enough to have 1 job. Like this guy. He's skipping around town. He's working for you. It's not all bad. Like, there's money in weird spots. Like, who would have ever thought dropping off boxes every day, wearing a brown t-shirt, you could make $2,000.
Yo, that is taking
$100 grand a year.
hard.
Who would have
Yeah, boy.
thought selling hot dogs? You can make $1,200 a week working 2 nights a week. I never would have guessed.
Stupid.
Okay? So there is still opportunity out here. It's just in odd spots, man. And it's up to you to work from home and work your regular job. I mean, this is kind of what it is. I mean, before this was full time with the YouTube stuff, you know, I worked every day, just like everyone else. Worked every day. And then I get home, and then I work some more. You know, even when this was like full-time money, I still kept my job waiting tables at 33. I'm 35 now, but like 33 years old. I'm out there going, here's your Chardonnay. You know what I mean? Another Cabernet, man. Like, come on. You want the Chilean sea bass or not, bitch? Hurry this up. Speaking of being a server, though, 20 years ago, working as a server, I lived in a corner one-bedroom apartment downtown with amazing water views for $700 a month. A similar apartment now is $3,600 a month. That's 5 times more. As a lawyer at age 47, I am unable to afford living in the same apartment I did. Maria, we sound good.
It's about to get more expensive.
You should be buying. I'm still buying, and in this video, I'm gonna make a case why you should be buying this shit. Because if you're still buying anything, anything around these prices, you're sitting on the easiest 5, 10, even 20 exits that we've ever seen in crypto, and even in stocks. Ah! Yes, literally, 20 exits. In crypto, especially, superbly, extremely, phallically, in the crypto projects and industries I will mention in this video. The treasure trove I will give you. Easy mode, lock it in, tell your grandmother you're pretty rich. And if you're new here, you're probably wondering, how's this guy know? Oh baby. What? What a stupid fucking question. You see how famous I am. You see the jawline cutting to steel, extending for miles. You see the signature 6-pack, extra spicy edition. And you see the subtle, humble, yet very obvious signs of extreme wealth and success. You come into the empty house of the most woke, the family friendly, as well as PG, the tri-state orange eating champion, and you ask me, how do I know? It is obvious that this is obvious. I have not seen buy points, I have not seen retardation and overselling like this since November 2023. And as of right now, obviously, I see the games, the girth, the incoming copy of Scrooge McDuck golden coins all over my rock hard and your flabby bodies. But unlike you, I have some f***ing manners. I don't come to you and ask you stupid questions we all know the answer for. I don't ask you why you constantly smell like piss and jizz. I don't even ask you why your mom is on OnlyFans and why her subscription cost is so cheap. And you know why I don't do that? Because it's rude and it's also obvious. We all know you're a 5'2" roly-poly, Cardano holding motherfucking pervert little manlets. But I don't bring it up. I don't ask you about it. Because asking stupid obvious questions is rude, and I'm very polite. So I'm gonna ignore your rudeness and explain to you why this market prices are so obvious right now. We are at a phase of the market where you can shit in your hand, throw it at the wall, not even take a shower at because we're looking at literally, systematically, on every chart, every TA reading, every metric of fear, the best buy points you're ever going to get. No, seriously, straight face. I know my intro screams trust and authenticity and professionalism, but on a serious note, gentlemen, I think anyone buying here is going to make a lot of fucking money. And I'll explain why. In order to do so, what we have to do is trust me. Look, I know you guys come to these videos for hot, juicy, sweaty coin picks, so you can FOMO into them like little chimpanzees, but you don't gotta hurry here. Trust me. There's no one buying anymore. Everybody hates crypto. Everybody's massively afraid. I'm going to get filled with nasty comments in the comment section telling me how stupid I am for buying the worst crash levels, the worst price levels, the highest level of overselling since the FTX crash. It's going to be everywhere. Look at the hate in the comments, but also read all the compliments about my rock and vibe. But in order to show you this, before we get into the progress, before we get into the parts of the mystery, we need to look at the overall market across the entire world. And we need to look at the reality about what's going on right here, not what everybody's afraid of and being scared of in the news. We need to look at where all the big sideline money is, and we need to look at all the major crypto adoption, which is being bought the f*** up by the biggest money on planet Earth right now. And then we need to combine this all together by looking at the singularity bull run that is about to happen, which is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Anyone not involved in this is going to be perma poor. And then finally, we'll take this big bubble and conclude it with where you want to be looking in crypto. Because when I say at the beginning of this video, with the guns, with the knives, with the ADHD content, these are the best buy prices you're ever going to get in crypto. Actually, called crypto now. So crypto cockery, whatever damage name you want to give it, because it sucks right now. We all have to admit it. But these are the best prices in crypto cockery you're ever going to see. They are foul, they are girthy, they are just showers, not growers right now. So please, let me lay my case. Woo! That's what I call an intro, gentlemen. You can don't stop the video now. There's a lot more to come, but tap off. Gotta take some methylene blue, some RFK wow, because I'm pretty exhausted after that one. And then after this, we gotta tone it down. We gotta take this down. Because I actually want you to listen to me right here. I'm gonna lay it out very clearly in this video. These are the best buy prices you're ever going to get. I don't care if you go 10, 15% lower. Anybody buying Ethereum, anybody buying altcoins at these prices right here, there is such a... Do not listen to this video, not financial advice, read the disclaimer. There is such a fucking ridiculous positive odds that these are going to be in massive profit within a year, and in worst case scenario, 1 to 2 years, that I am just simply buying as much as I can right now within reason. Now, I've been buying the entire way down. As soon as we got around $2,000 ETH, I've been pulling the trigger a lot. And that's because I think if you're buying altcoins in the 2,000 ETH range, in the 1,800 ETH range, in the 1,700 ETH range, and if we get to 1,500 ETH range or lower, I think any buys in these areas are going to deliver massive, stupid profits. And if you look at what's happening in the world and everything that's going on right here, I can't fathom, there's no argument. If you're telling me that these will not be in massive profit in 1, max 2 years, which by the way, being able to 20x some money, to be able to 10x some money, to be able to even 5x some money in 2 years' time is fucking phenomenal by any investing metric, and that's the worst case scenario. Everything I'm talking about right here could be hitting an entire.
What's up, cuz?
On this channel, I am not a fortune teller. I'm not going to tell you when it's going to go exactly up or down. All we have to do, though, is look at the trajectory of what's going on right now, and by all accounts, it is fucking unfathomable that buys in this range will not be in massive profit in the near future. Maybe not next week, maybe not next month, maybe not next couple months, but worst case scenario right here is all you have to do is wait. And you do not get situations like this in investing or crypto except once every few years. And what we're looking at right now is the most nuclear, crazy, overreactive meltdown since the FTX crash. We are actually reacting worse than the FTX crash when people's crypto bank accounts were literally getting control, alt, deleted. People's entire stablecoin stacks were being erased. We're acting like it's worse than that right now. Overselling everything that's going on, everything that's in the news right now, despite the absolute massive adoption happening in crypto. I don't get it, and you can't tell me why I should be anything but long-term bullish right now. So with that being said, let's look at the overall market right now. Now, as I speak right now, I want you to understand the thesis on this channel. I want to be very, very clear. I say a lot of shit on Twitter. I endlessly bull post because it's fucking hilarious. And I am perma-bullish all the time on one simple piece.
Your friends have to leave.
You want to say what I think on this channel. People say all sorts of things. They think I think or that they think I say. Because I'm extremely famous and they're obsessed with my opinion. I don't blame them. I get it. If I was a 5'2" little hentai addict, I would be obsessed with me too. There aren't a lot of good things in this world, and I'm definitely one of them. So take it in, obsess all you want. But if you want to put words in my mouth, you want to see or say what I think, we have one simple piece of there is no reason to sell any altcoins. There's no reason to sell any bags, despite all the ups and downs that we've had the last year. There's absolutely no reason to sell anything until we see a new Ethereum all-time high. Last 2023 November, we made massive $1 million buys. We got up multiple 8 figures. Then it went down again, 60-70%. Then it went up again, and we got into the very high 8 figures. And now we're down again to middle low 8 figures. In the past year and a half, I've been an idiot buying November, to a genius, to an idiot again, to a massive genius, now an idiot again. And people are whiplashing, going nuts,
Great
back
fuck,
and
nigga.
forth, freaking out over my statements because they don't understand the strategy. And as I mentioned to you, every decision I make is based around this one simple strategy that I think is going to pay off insanely well. Do not sell altcoins until we see a new Ethereum all-time high. The end. Once we see the Ethereum all-time high happen, whether it's next month, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, the prices that we're at right now, and the prices that we bought at in November, and the prices we bought at in a lot of the lows from all the fear in dips the last year, they are going to be in stupid, retarded profit. That's the bet. If we never see an Ethereum all-time high again in the future here in the next couple of years, we are on this channel. None of this is going to work out. My strategy, my case, my big bet will not pay off. But if we see an Ethereum all-time high in the next 1 year, in the next 6 months, worst case next 2 years, every project, every coin, Ethereum itself, Cardano, Solana, whatever, is going to shit fire, fury, and brimstone in a positive way up. So please understand me as I talk about it in this video. We're going to see ups and downs. We could even go a little bit lower. I'm not sitting here telling you we're going to pump next week. I'm not sitting here telling you I can read the immediate future. I am just sitting here telling you I would be blown the fuck away if we don't see a new Ethereum all-time high in the next 6 months, 1 year, worst case scenario, 2 years, and that's when the bank holiday weekend I'm talking about here happens. And this is why. So first things first, let's look at the market right now and what's happening. Obviously, it's a disaster. Okay, we've already kind of recovered from yesterday. I'm not reading any direction right now, and frankly, I'm not telling you we can't go lower. I could see 1,500 Ethereum. I could even see 1,100 Ethereum in the worst case nuclear, terrible situation. I'm not calling a bottom here because frankly, who knows? Who knows? That said, we see the entire market absolutely freaking out about what's happening with tariffs right now. This is the worst day in the stock market that we've seen since the COVID crash. This is about the worst levels of selling that we've seen since the FTX crash. We go look at, by the way, you should just follow me on Twitter at CSS Becker. I'm posting bullish copium 24/7. If you want to see what I'm thinking on the market, you want to see things that are going on as I see them, follow me on Twitter at CSS Becker. Also, you'll be able to get into my meme coin, all sorts of other stuff we're doing. It's really neat. By the way, I'm not making any money on the meme coin. I know if you're new here, you hear someone say meme coin, you think giant scam, influencer pumping nothing. I will be taking 0 of my meme coin. And the reason I'm doing it is because I think it's funny. So before you jump to conclusions, follow me at CSS Becker. Now, of course, what I like to do on Twitter is post all sorts of bullish coaching. It's my favorite thing to do. But if we're looking at just the levels of everything, for example, GeoTrader is a person I follow on Twitter. Go check them out. But we're seeing overselling and selling lows and altcoin capitulation that is worse than the FTX collapse. And I gotta tell you right now, the state of cryptos right now, the prices that we're at in altcoins, with the dumping we've seen so far, we are not in a worse situation than the FTX collapse. In the stock market, we are seeing the worst days since COVID. This is nothing like COVID. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm some expert on tariffs. I'm not going to tell you that I understand the macroeconomics of everything that's going to happen right here. What I do think is happening, though, in my humble opinion, is people are overreacting to these things. Now, I'm not going to tell you what Donald Trump's going to do from here. I'm going to be straight up with you. When Donald Trump got elected, I thought we were going to be pumping to the moon. Obviously, I got caught very off guard there. That still does not change the overall strategy of what we're doing here. Have we seen a new Ethereum all-time high? No. I have no interest in selling my altcoins in mass till then. I did take a little bit of profits last year. Of course, the move would have been to dump everything November, December. Of course, that would have been the move. Of course, that's the obvious move. But I want to remind you of one thing right here, guys. I want to remind you of one simple thing here before we talk about anything else. I want to show you the BNB chart from 2021-ish bull run right here. If you look at this chart right here, if we zoom in before the big rise right here in this bull run, this is when Ethereum was hitting its all-time highs and alt season everything was flying. We go look at this before this bump right here. Look at this chart. If you were getting to this massive, massive gains right here, in order to get these gains right here, there's only 2 ways you could have done it. There's only 2 ways. One, you had to swing trade this motherfucker the sell it, buy at the bottom, sell it, buy at the bottom, sell it, buy at the bottom. That's one way you could have got into. That's the one way you could have gotten max exposure to this pump right here. Or there's one other way you could have done it. You had to hold through all of this right here. If you bought right here, people thought you were crazy. If you held the right here, people thought you were a genius. If you held right here and didn't sell, people thought you were the stupid, fucking dumbest person on planet Earth. But if you held through all this, right here, people thought you were an absolute genius. Then everybody thought you were an absolute dumb retard again, making fun of you, telling you you eat ass. Then you went up here again, people telling you, oh, he's gonna make it all back. Then people said, nah, he's gonna lose it all again. And then it went up right here, and then it did this, and everybody thought you were some super mutant, Dante superhero motherfucker. And all you had to do was just hold until you saw an Ethereum all-time high. That's all you had to do. And so right now, when we look at charts and stuff that we've been holding, one of our top coins right here, for example, Destra, because I think AI is going to be insane here, and I'll explain why in a second. I ask you, what are we seeing right here? We got Destra way down here on the channel. Way down here. We got a lot of our AI coins, we got a lot of our infrastructure, our RWA coins, even our game coins. When everything was dumpster on fire in November. Guess what people told me then? Guess what people were saying in the comment section? Crypto's dead. Look at this has-been. Oh, it was so stupid. And then it pumped the moon. Everyone's thinking, everyone's saying, oh, he's a genius. Oh my gosh. And it crashed again. Everybody called me an idiot. Said Bitcoin ETF failed for a bunch of months. Pumped super again. People told me AI's back. We're going to the moon. And now it's crashed down again. People are telling me, oh, he's an idiot. He's fucking killing people. Getting wrecked. When all I'm doing is the same exact thing I said since November 2023. I'm holding till an Ethereum all-time high. I have no interest in selling what is going to be the hypiest, craziest market ever when crypto is hitting mass adoption and Ethereum is hitting all-time high. The prices we're going to see on Destra and all these coins, we're going to see dollar plus, easy. No, I'm not selling my damn bags due to tariff speculation before we have an Ethereum all-time high, when crypto adoption is hitting the highest points we've ever seen before, and every single big major investment firm, government, everything is stocking up on Ethereum, Bitcoin, and altcoins. I'm not going to be selling right now. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be panicking. I'm not going to be FOMO panic selling. I'm going to do exactly what I set out to do, which in my opinion, if you're watching this channel, is your best bet to fucking make it, which is holding through turbulence until we've seen Ethereum all-time high. It is that damn fucking easy. Because as much as we want to act like we're smart and predicting, no one, including me, is going to be able to swing trade this unless they are one of the best traders in the entire world. I'm going to tell you what, guys, I'm busy running companies. You're probably doing other things, right? You're not a good trader. And if you are a good trader, I'm going to tell you one thing. You're probably not top of the world trader right now, especially if you're watching YouTube for crypto advice and stock advice. You probably, in reality, fucking suck at this. So you have one shot to get gains like this, and it's through holding through stuff like this. You are never going to get gains like this without doing this, because this one strategy right here, holding through all this stuff right here, the turbulence, the mass bearishness, the hypishness, and stuff like that, to an Ethereum all-time high, this is your best shot because you're playing your one edge that other people don't have, which is patience and the ability to hold. That is your edge. People that are swing trading this stuff right here, their edge is their incredible Magnum Dong trading abilities. People that are calling the bull market right here, I don't know how they do it, but their edge is their incredible crypto skills, which is probably 5, 10, 15 years of hardcore trading at that. And that's if they're not LARPing and lying on Twitter. You don't have that, I don't have that. So how are we going to get these gains right here? By stomaching this crap right here. So, back to the market itself. What we're seeing right now is the biggest, craziest amount of selling, and we have to ask ourselves, why? Why is the market down right now? What are the tariffs going to do that's going to cause more damage than what we've seen in the market right now? What is it going to do to the economy that's going to cause more damage right now? Now, from my opinion, every single expert that we've seen the last 5, 10 years be wrong about literally everything. You remember the people that told us we were in a good economy as the price of homes tripled, as rent tripled, as everyone's US dollar value in their bank account plummeted, as they printed trillions of dollars and called it a good idea? I'm not saying or telling you how well Trump's policies are going to be. I'm not up here to defend Trump's policies. All I know is that the retards who've been wrong about everything the last 5 to 10 years are now telling me that a recession is coming and the world's over and we're going in for economic turbulence. These are the same people that have missed every single economic downturn the last decade. These are the people that have up every single economic call they've made in the last 10 years. Why on earth would I be reacting and selling and getting rid of my entire strategy based on these people's opinions? Why? And if we're looking at COVID and that crash, that was scary because the world might have been going into total lockdown and some some hellish plague-like reality. That didn't happen, but we could have. They could have. FTX crash. People's crypto bank accounts were literally being deleted. Right now, we see Trump putting tariffs that are the equivalent or half the equivalent of countries that we trade with. Is this going to be immediately shocking for the economy? Maybe, I don't know. But I don't see this as anything even near the amount of panic or craziness that we saw during COVID. More so, inflation is absolutely plummeting right now. It's rock bottom. It's this crater. It's been beaten. And for the first time, we're not seeing the US dollar implode in value. What does this mean? Rates are going to get lower. And, God forbid, they actually make some revenue with this and all the cutting in Doge, and they're able to actually lower taxes for the middle and lower class. What does all that mean? It means lots more money in people's pockets and rates getting much more lower so people have access to loans again. You can't get a fucking loan right now at any reasonable amount. It's like 5 to 6% in good terms. Money's impossible to get a hold of. So riddle me this. The fact that we're not seeing anything near the level of damage or anything that's going on, similar to the FTX crash or COVID, combined with the fact that rates are coming down low, why in name would I be wanting to sell right now? Why wouldn't I be buying? With watching BlackRock, the government, Trump, buying massive amounts of Ethereum, literally billions of dollars worth of Ethereum, why would I be betting against an Ethereum bull run in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years tops? Why would I be doing that? Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't to me. With Visa, banks, institutions, not just buying up Ethereum, but buying up all the altcoins underneath it as well, and then building their own infrastructure, their own RWA on Ethereum. Why would I be selling now? What? On top of this, look at what is happening in technology right now. I bet you've probably seen the Gibly stuff or whatever going on. I'm not going to get into everything that's going on in image generation AI, and I'm not saying because we can make stupidity images right now that means we're heading into the singularity. I am going to say everything I've been seeing in AI, as I work primarily in tech, is fucking insane. We're heading into the biggest bump in human productivity we've ever seen in the history of the world, by far. And in my opinion, we are heading into a tech boom that's going to make the dot-com bubble look like that. Wow, rates are going to be getting lower, money's going to be getting more accessible to more people, and loans are going to be getting more accessible to more people. With what we're seeing in robotics, with what we're seeing in AI, what we're seeing in all related aspects, and on top of all this, we're seeing the most sidelined money ever in crypto. We have more stable coins laying about, we have more people ready to buy in than ever before. When this all starts to click, everything I'm talking about, this money is going to pour in like never before, and we're going to be seeing new money and good old-fashioned chunky retirement fund money coming in. It's going to be dumb. And when this singularity bull run that I'm talking about, I've been talking about over and over again, this video happens, everybody's going to freak out and everyone's going to freak out and panic because if you don't get in on this run, you're going to be perma-poor. Because AI and everything's going to start taking off. If you're not in, you're going to be left behind. And the amount of FOMO we're going to see is going to make the dot-com boom look like a little tiny midget bump. All while rates are getting lowered, all while loans are getting more accessible and money's becoming accessible again. And Trump is going to be so incentivized to pump the market going in the midterm. Why are we not actually tired? Damn, flip here. This is the perfect storm for one of the best markets and the fastest growing boom in human history. And definitely one of the biggest hype bubbles. The bubble behind AI when it happens is going to be so huge that it will blot out the sun. And we haven't seen it yet because most people don't understand the impact AI is having yet. I work in tech and advertising, and what it's done in just the past month blows my fucking mind. It has changed everything. One person is now able to do the work of hundreds of people and produce so much, just one person. We're going to see that happen across the board as people start demanding AI and to use AI just like electricity. Turning off your ChatGPT, turning off your access to AI, well, you literally like turning off the Wi-Fi in your house, hell, the electricity in your house. And demand for that is going to skyrocket everything, which ties into what is going on in crypto and RWA, what is going on in crypto and AI, and a little bit in gaming. I know you guys are going to roll your eyes at gaming, but I still think it's going to be one of the hottest narratives. But the ones up front are going to be AI and RWA, and they are built on Ethereum. And here's the thing, we're not actively trying to make tons of money in Ethereum on this channel. I do have a giant bag of Ethereum now. The thing is, when Ethereum moves, it's the coins underneath it that are going to move. Follow me, let me show you. See, if you're semi-new to this, this is all you need to understand about what's coming. It's a very simple situation right here. Ethereum is going to move, and it's probably going to do, potentially, even a 5x from here. That's really cool. And I think, I can't picture a reality in the next couple of years where Ethereum doesn't make some type of moves like this. I just don't see it. I don't see Donald Trump buying nearly, like literally billions of dollars worth of ETH. I think he's at 500 million right now. I don't see BlackRock buying billions of dollars worth of ETH as the market keeps going down and down and down.